Welcome back to another episode of Leaders Unplugged. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Rob Elisher. He is currently a humanities instructor at a classical Christian education school. Please welcome to the episode, Dr. Elisher.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. And to start this episode, we asked all our guests this question. How did you get into your career? And why did you get into your career?
Yeah, well, I teach humanities, and you guys know this well. I was your teacher when you were in 11th grade here at the Ambrose School. We do a lot of philosophy, a lot of theology, and that's what I studied. So when I was an undergrad, I was a business major, and then I started taking philosophy classes, and then I started studying philosophy more seriously. I studied abroad, picked my own classes and that sort of thing. And then when I got back to school, went to Azusa Pacific, I decided I am getting burnt out on the business stuff, and I don't have a passion there, so I want to study philosophy as well. So I took up a double major, and then when I got toward the end of my senior year, it became clear to me that I was going to keep studying. I was just not going to stop exploring the world of ideas, big ideas, right? So that took me into graduate school, and I wanted to keep learning and keep growing intellectually and in the understanding. And so eventually, it took me a while. It took me about 8 or 9 years. I started nearing the end of my PhD program. The whole time, though, the idea is that you go on to higher ed. If you're in a PhD program and you earn a PhD, you're typically in academia. But for personal reasons and the fact that this whole realm of classical education is really on the is growing exponentially, I became aware of this opportunity, this sort of opportunity. Saw the job posting at Ambrose. I was living in California at the time, and I decided that I can go have really good conversations about the stuff that I care about with gentlemen and ladies at the Ambrose School. A little bit younger age group than I was used to, but I like the high school age as well. I was a high schooler once. I think I kind of remember what that was like. That's the story essentially. In classical ed, you teach kind of weird stuff that they only sort of teach in college, stuff that you only really learn in college. So I had the expertise, if you will, to talk about old dead guys. And so that led me here, and I love it. I think that even my first year here, I was coming out of the college classroom for a couple years, teaching in that capacity. And my first year here, I was really struck by the level of dialogue and conversation, the level of depth. I didn't shy away from going deep with you guys, for instance, in theology class and stuff like that. And not only that, but the collegiality, the atmosphere of dedication to our mission and that sort of thing. It's been great. Yeah.
And for teaching, what would you say are some personality traits that go well with teaching? So like whether it be openness, for example, like having an open mind, but also what might be some traits that you might warn against, such as like arrogance, for example, unwillingness to learn. What might some of those traits be, not only for a teacher, but like a student as well, trying to learn?
Yeah. Okay. I think I'll start. So I wear a couple hats. So sometimes I wear the scholar hat. When I was teaching you guys, I didn't have my PhD, and I defended my dissertation the summer after your junior year. So that was 2023. So while I've been here, I've also been writing and things like that. So I wear the kind of writer scholar hat sometimes. Like right now, I'm doing some book proposals, but then I also, full-time teacher. So I guess I'll answer your question about being a teacher first and the character traits that match that. Yeah. Okay, so positive character traits or favorable character traits. Number one, I think I would say a kind of sociability. I hesitate to say likability, but you have to have a degree of like social flexibility to be able to relate and interact with people that are not like you, namely 16 and 17 year olds. Very, very much different phase of life, different priorities, that sort of thing. So I think you have to be able to walk into a classroom and just kind of hold your own socially. Yeah, I think that if you're socially awkward as a teacher, you're just not going to make it, because the students have to be bought in. There has to be a certain level of engagement from the student, and teaching and learning is a social enterprise. If we think about it as like information dumping into the brains of the learners, then we're getting it wrong, because you have to engage with your whole self and with your passions for anything to stick, for you to start to integrate your understanding and integrate new pieces of information into your understanding. So all that to say, there has to be some like real social give and take between the teacher and the student. And so I think that's kind of an intangible. It's sort of a soft skill, I guess you could call it. Something that you can't really quantify. And I'm not saying that I have like sociability in droves or anything like that, but you have to have a certain level of, you have to have a certain ability to interact, maybe even a little bit of sarcasm, where you can kind of give it back to the students when they give you a little bit of lip. A little bit of street cred, if you will. So anyways, that's one thing. And honestly, if we're talking about leadership and success in different kinds of careers, I think that's anything that requires like sustained interaction between boss and employer and colleagues and anything like that. I think like you're not going to get hired very well if you strike your employer or your would-be employer as someone who's awkward or flexible. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do about that, besides, I don't know, praying. But yeah, so that's one. And let's see, another, a character trait, positive character trait. Yeah, as a teacher, love for learning, for sure. A love for learning that disciplines your desires toward the requisite knowledge, I would say. Because the first thing that a good teacher has to have is knowledge of the subject matter. They have to know what they teach. I think the better they know what they teach, the better they'll be able to relate that to the students. They have to know it inside and out. They have to know it with different kinds of vocabulary, and with different sorts of, from different sorts of angles. And if you don't have that strong desire to learn, and this goes back all the way to college, you're simply going to get burnt out, and you're not going to have the passion to understand the material that you need to understand. So yeah, that's what brought me to where I am now. I mean, I didn't get into the field of philosophy because I really wanted to teach philosophy. Actually, I got into the field of philosophy because I loved philosophy. I loved exploring the great ideas. And then it turned out that when I was in it, I realized that this is what someone like me does. I want to get to a certain level of education. And it turns out that I actually really do like teaching. I really do like that side of it as well. But I'm thankful that I had a kind of, I had that like initial fundamental love for the subject matter. I mean, think about your best classes here at Ambrose. The ones that it didn't even feel like you were working, but you were, right? And you were also learning, but it didn't feel like you were learning, but you were. It was probably when you could see the passion in the teacher's eyes, right? And then your passion matched that passion. You found yourself being drawn into their sort of mentality. So all my best classes have been. I teach Dante with a lot of success because I love Dante. I mean, I didn't even read Dante before I got here, really. And then I started to, and I'm like, goodness gracious, this is amazing. It immediately cracked my top, the Divine Comedy of Dante immediately cracked my top 5 book list. And it turns out like my students really get into it too, and they learn a lot from it. It's just because, honestly, I can't take too much credit besides the fact that I really love it. So I really love the teacher. So those are the 2 positive ones. And then, so unfavorable characteristics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for a teacher, I'd say it does not help to have a misguided idea of your aim or goal, particularly with regard to the learning outcome. So if you have unfair or unwarranted expectations on the students, that by the end of a class period, they're going to be just as interested in the material as you are. They're going to learn everything that comes out of your mouth. They're going to be immediately changed morally because based on the morally charged teaching. That's just an unfair expectation. If you hope that they're all going to become scholars by the end of junior year, you hope wrong. That's true of about 10%. And I don't even want that, really, because not everybody's meant to be a scholar. I mean, I think everybody who comes through these doors, we want them to, we do want them to have a passion for the great ideas and the great books. But honestly, my hope is that, and I put this on my syllabi, I think, last time I checked, my hope is that my hope for literature class, for example, I teach theology, I teach literature, is that the students will pick up one of the books that we read again sometime in life and read it cover to cover, just from their own desire to revisit it. So that's it. Like if you guys picked up Milton at the age of 30, then my goal will have been achieved. It's a very modest goal. But I think like if you have unfair or like overinflated expectations about what teaching is going to accomplish in the short term, you'll immediately get discouraged. And so I think like teachers need to they need to keep focused on the craft and on what they're doing, and then let the seeds that they plant come to fruition when they're supposed to come to fruition. This might be much later in life. The chances of them learning and integrating and applying every one of your lesson plans to any degree of success is very low. But the chances of students being exercised mentally and growing certain mental muscles and carving out neural pathways that they otherwise wouldn't, and being struck by and being convicted by certain fundamental moral principles, for example, all that's very realistic. And so I think like a lot of what I do in class is instead of being able to recall the main ideas and arguments from a book or something like that, I'd rather just do some heavy mental lifting in class, like almost every day of the week. You guys might remember this. Yeah. Even though I didn't have you guys for literature, but I'm kind of known for that as a teacher. Like when it's time to start class, it's like even though we have some fun in class, hopefully a little bit too. Like I make the certain students work mentally. I think that's what we're doing. We're building mental muscle. We're learning how to think, and then you guys can use that ability to think for anything else. By the way, same thing works for college too. If you have a major that requires you to think, that's the strongest foundation you can have, I think. And you can think hard in any major probably, to some extent. But the thing is, I think on average, people's careers change like every 7 or 8 years in life, and it's something like 5 to 10 times in the length of a career. I think that's true of the last generation. I mean, I can't cite any study on that or anything like that. But if you end up not doing the thing that you're going to school to do, then at least you became the sort of person that can do whatever it is you end up doing, right? Mm-hmm. So that I drifted into some other territory, but yeah, so unfair expectations, you can get burnt out super quick, especially in like junior high and high school, when you expect immediate and verifiable results. So
yeah, so kind of following the teaching topic, as you've kind of grown in your teaching skills and stuff like that, because in a sense, I feel like teaching isn't something that you ever, reach the peak, or like you might reach the peak, but you don't ever reach the top.
Right.
There's always more to learn and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, what were some of, or like maybe like what was like one of the biggest lessons you've learned over the years of your teaching so far, mm-hmm. that you think would be important for maybe someone looking to be a teacher, mm-hmm. Whether it's, at a high college level or just, something for, 5th and 6th graders.
Right.
What do you think would be a mistake that you've made that would be important to know?
Okay. So I would say this is a mistake that I continue to make, and it's something that I'm continuing to work on, and I get frustrated at myself for not having figured it out. I try to do way too much in a class period. How long are your guys' college classes, typically?
About like Ambrose lengths, like 50 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. Mine's kind of wonky because I go to a different kind of college.
Yeah.
So it's all in one. It's all in one classroom,
yeah.
And it's only one class, but it goes for like 8 hours. So it's mine are long, but
no, all the time in the world. Really, yes. I remember 3 times a week you'd have like 55-minute classes or 50-minute classes, mm-hmm. and then if you do 2 times a week, it's like 1 hour and 25 minutes or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then there's these crazy 3-hour classes, which I remember taking business law from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Tuesdays.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was good. There was like 60 people in there. Probably 50 of them were sleeping. Anyways, so the mistake I make is trying to do too much, trying to explore too much within too limited a length of time. And my desire is always like broad exposure to the great ideas. I'm thinking, like, I get the opportunity to teach the great ideas. Like, what does it mean to live a good life? What is the good life? What's the moral life? How do we get there? What is God? And how do we relate to Him? How do we relate to Him better? So those are the kinds of things like I get to explore every day, and I think they're the most important things to discuss, insofar as they have eternal implications, right? I want to do as much of that as I can in a class period. But what ends up happening is whenever I have too high of aspirations for a class, I'm moving too fast, and I get in sort of a frenetic or a frantic mode, and I'm doing a lot of dictation because these are the things you need to get. And so I'm filling up the learning space with a lot of information. And sometimes information is contrasted with formation, which is something that we want to do here at Ambrose. We don't want to just inform, because if all you're doing is informing, it's a one-way street. It's not reciprocal. And the formation only happens when it's reciprocal, or when there's reciprocity. And so I find myself teaching good things, asking good questions. Once I get the looked for, sought after result, though, I find myself, okay, we got to move on now. We got to move on. Stop talking about it. And it's not as though, I'm getting better at this. It's not as though I like cut off all questions, especially if it's a good question and it's off topic. I recognize, like, on a gut level, that that's the most fruitful thing sometimes that we can do. But the most successful classes is when I go, okay, like here's the one thing that we're doing in this class. I'm going to know this really well. I'm going to think through it from every possible angle. And then when I get into class, I'm going to have a conversation about it. And maybe I have an idea about how I'd like to get the students to interact with the topic or the concept with me. And that's the key, is to have the students also doing the work of interacting with them, so that it's not simply one directional, even if there's lecture in it. But I think those are the best classes. Like in this class, we're going to figure out Athanasius's understanding of the atonement, not his understanding of the atonement and the incarnation, and how the incarnation related to a church council or whatever theology ideas, right? Mm-hmm. We're just going to focus on Athanasius' understanding of atonement. We're going to dig into this text right here. And then I also have found that sometimes I can over-prepare to the point of like regimenting the class so rigidly that it doesn't give us the flexibility to go where students actually might need to go. Like, I'm trying to force them into a specific mold when I start filling up the learning space with too much information. So that's the mistake that I make about 3 times a week, I would say, if not more. But it's one that I'm like continually sort of chipping away at. And you're right. Like, I mean, I think like if anybody had a case here to have arrived as a teacher, maybe your mom, I don't know what she does in the music department. Mr. Hosier comes to mind, right? But if you ask him, he's going to say that he's still working at it, right? So yeah, it's definitely a process, and I'm at the very beginning of that process. I think I came to Ambrose thinking that I want to learn how to be a good teacher. I'm definitely still in the process of doing that. Haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, cool. Good stuff. Yeah. And then in terms of, because being a teacher, obviously you've learned stuff about yourself and how to teach others, kind of a thing. But from what you've seen from the student perspective, especially for students getting ready to go into college, mm-hmm. or maybe already in college, what would you say is the best, I guess, mindset to have for someone to make sure they're getting everything done, especially if they're not someone who's, necessarily super scholarly or super diligent with their work? What would you say is a good mindset to have to make sure they're still getting stuff done?
Yeah. Well, I want to start by talking about organization and planning. They say that there is an identifiable dopamine hit for every time you check off a box on a to-do list item. But you don't get that unless you construct the to-do list and add some level of organization to it, right? So if you think through the week as a struggling student in order of priority, maybe with a view of the coming weeks as well, if you have big projects and stuff, and you give it a kind of hierarchy of priority, and you can map out from day to day what needs to be done, that maybe takes half hour, right? But think about the dividends that would actually pay throughout the week to keep you on track, because there's a list somewhere, hopefully near, that's going to hold you accountable. And you're successful to the degree that you are completing that list, right? And this is dangerous because my temptation is to make a crazy list and set my expectations too high, and then I get despondent and depressed. I don't do it again. But set like a realistic, modest hierarchy of goals, and then start chipping away with your free time. Your free time should, I don't know. If you're struggling, you just have to recognize that that the free time is like a remainder after you've completed everything within reason that you need to do. But yeah, I think that can build confidence as you start getting into the habit of just being more productive. And I think that confidence and motivation can go a long way, and then even take on a life of its own. Yeah, so interesting fact about my history is that in high school, I was not a good student at all on purpose. The culture of my high school, my public high school, was very different than the culture here, where it is actually it gives you social credit to do well in school to some degree. Am I right? Is that your guys' experience?
Yeah.
Exact opposite almost. In my high school, I thought that it was just not cool to try. So I think I had like a 2.2 GPA in high school. And so I didn't go directly to a four-year college. I started at a junior college out of necessity. And I basically operated much the same way that I did in high school for the first year or so of junior college. Until I took a writing class and got to write on a paper of my choice. So I decided to write on something I was super interested in, something in religion. And I wrote way too long of a paper, and I found myself going above and beyond. And then I realized, actually doing scholarly or academic type stuff isn't that hard if you're interested in it.
Right.
And I'm actually pretty decent at it. And so I said, I wonder what would happen if I put this level of effort into, my other classes. I found myself taking interest in classes that I wouldn't normally be taking interest in. And then as I was able to successfully complete all the assignments that I was able to, and I started with one semester I focused on just 2 classes in junior college. I just took 2 classes, not 5, because I wasn't in the position, psychologically, to take on a full 15-unit load and succeed. So I succeeded with those 2 classes, and those were like items in the checklist. They gave me kind of motivation and they gave me a kind of conviction and motivation, inspiration to do better. And so then it just started coming easily. So maybe a couple takeaways for students struggling to stay on top of things. For my own life, one piece of advice I would give is you may have to commit yourself to something more achievable and less rigorous until you can kind of get your feet under you. So for me, in junior college, I had the flexibility of not being a full-time student while I worked. And so I just, like I said, I took a couple of classes and I aced them until I felt like I could figure this out. And then I added on to that from there. But in college also, you can take more or less difficult schedules. I had friends at school that were like, I must take 18 units at all times, and they're going to be the hard. And they were miserable, and they didn't do as well as they should have in the classes that they were supposed to be learning from. So I think, if you're one of those students and you're currently in college, there's no shame in cutting back to 12 units and maybe taking some classes that you're actually super interested in, prioritizing those, and then build on that the next semester. But then the other part of what I was saying was basically just goal tracking, organizing your life around very achievable hierarchy of goals. And like I said, it is a motivational tool as well because of the the psychological payoff for actually achieving these goals, and they should be achievable. That's another thing, is that you shouldn't be setting too lofty and nebulous goals, because you can't achieve those. You need concrete steps for those. Like, become a better student. That's way too nebulous and lofty, right? So like, what are 3 things that I can do to become a better student? Do my homework. That might still be too lofty. Maybe a couple other steps underneath that. But yeah, I could talk about goal setting and the benefits and dangers of that a lot more if you guys wanted to go that route. But yeah.
I wanted to touch base on, you mentioned dopamine. I'm a psychology student, so I happen to be learning that.
You into dopamine?
Oh yeah. I'm into dopamine. But it's a common misconception about dopamine that it's just you get it from pleasure. And that's not necessarily the case. What the evidence actually indicates is that you get dopamine in pursuit of the task. And so, like you mentioned, a checklist, that's like perfect thing where you can get dopamine from that. And so I when I learned that, I was like, oh, it's really interesting. And so just a little thing to add there. But
it's the journey.
it is a journey.
It's not necessarily the destination.
Yeah. And then another question that I had is...
Although, can I just say, it does feel really good to arrive at the destination, too.
That is true. That is true.
Congratulations, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, working here at Ambrose, what's kind of a day in the life of Dr. Elisher? What does he do on a daily basis?
Yeah. Basically, it's just preparing to teach, teaching, and grading. Trying to be as efficient as I can in that while still being available to students. I have the students are my neighbors, and so I need to love them by doing the best I can for them. But I also have neighbors back home, and I got a wife and 2 little ones at home, so they need me home at a reasonable time too. So yeah, sometimes I sequester myself in a dark room like back here or something like that. And get squared away to do the next thing. But yeah, it's a pretty light or manageable teaching load. I do in the fall. I do 2 theology classes a day and 2 literature classes, and I have 1, 2, sometimes 3 prep periods until the end of the day. Yeah, and there's the bell schedule, keeps me on track. It's kind of nice. Not everybody has that in their job. Also, it's a common complaint here that the bell schedule can add, even though the sound is a nice like ding, 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 it can definitely add to the stress levels.
Yeah.
Just like 49-minute increments. That's not actually how life is, but it is.
It's kind of funny because whenever we visit the school and we hear that bell, it's kind of just like a limbic response to like, oh shoot, we gotta go to class.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
I was just kind of curious, as a student, homework is always like the factor of the class.
Mm-hmm.
But in the other sense, homework can be also the learning factor of the class, like especially like math classes, stuff like that. The whole point of the class is to do the homework, because that's where you learn.
Yeah. Repetition.
Yeah, right. And so, from your perspective, what would you say is the value of homework? One, and I think most of it is probably repetition and understanding the contents, but also, where do you draw the line of like, okay, that's too much homework and that's not enough?
Mm-hmm. Well, Ambrose helps draw the line for me. I'm not supposed to give, I think it's like more than an hour and 10 minutes of homework on average a night. And that includes reading. So if there's anything in addition to that, like a writing response or something like that, I've got to keep it below that. And typically I give like average of 30 to 45 minutes a night. I tend to err on the side of less is more. So I recognize that students have most students have very busy schedules and they're not going to do as well in the things that they're doing if they're maxed out. But for me, as a humanities teacher, you really have to chew on and ruminate on the material to benefit from it. And I recognize that that's not going to happen very well in a 49-minute class period. So I think the value of homework for me is just holding students to attention on the things that they're supposed to attend to. Sometimes in anticipation of the discussion, like I'll give them a reflection assignment that gives them something to say when it comes to discuss in class. Sometimes I'll give them a post-discussion reflection that allows the material to sink in. But I mean, it's kind of a lofty goal, but I hear from our upper school dean, Mr. Gerber, his message to us is that you really should not be giving students homework that is not leading them in contemplation to the transcendentals. You shouldn't be giving students homework that's not leading them in contemplation of the true, the good, and the beautiful. That's a pretty high standard, but it's I think it's something really important to keep in mind. So my thing for homework is it's just supposed to act, it's supposed to serve, it's supposed to act in aid of the really valuable class time that we have. And if it's something that's work for work's sake, then it's not going to be assigned. I actually pride myself, and I've heard from students affirm this, that I just don't give busy work. I'm a student. I am kind of still a student in a sense, but I was an official student just 2 years ago, so I remember what it was like to have busy work, and it was the worst, right? But also, you shouldn't just categorize everything that you don't like as busy work either, because sometimes the teacher knows something you don't, right? Like the math teacher who assigned 2 hours of math, they probably know that you need to actually do the math and do the repetition to get it. So, hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Sure. I'm just thinking of the question we usually ask. Which ones that we have actually gotten through.
So what would be one success that you've learned a life lesson from that you carry with you still to this day? But also, what is one failure that you've learned a lesson from? Whether it be through going to college, teaching, high school, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it was a good question. I was thinking about it a little bit. For me, the answer is pretty obvious, actually. As for the success, I would say completing my PhD, writing and defending my dissertation. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but probably also, definitely also one of the most fruitful and rewarding things I've ever done as well, as the hard stuff typically is, right? But what I learned from the dissertation, the life lesson that I learned from completing that, and that was a crazy year, because I was teaching you guys here at Ambrose, which, first year of teaching is notorious here, because it's not like other schools where they give you a curriculum. Like, here's the book that you're supposed to teach, just show up and do it. Like, I'm not going to read this stuff with you guys and sit through it, right? So first year teaching and finishing my dissertation, writing chapters in my spare time was crazy, and having a young family. But what I learned from finishing is that difficult seasons are just that, they're seasons. And even though it feels sometimes like these hard times last forever, though they're sometimes necessary, the challenging, difficult times, even the valleys, if you want to call them that, in life are finite. And they are limited, they're not eternal, even though you might think that they are. I mean, I worked on that paper, that book, the dissertation, for 3 years, and it took me a total of 8 years to finish the PhD. So I started to think that it was just going to last forever, but it didn't. I actually finished it, and I was like, okay, now there's a transition in life. So I don't know. It is sometimes you need to do things and complete things, and I think I needed to do that, even though at one time I was questioning that, and I think that actually leads to the failure. Wait, I'll say one more thing about what I learned from the success. So what I learned is that I actually have the capacity to do good scholarly work. That was affirmed through the process and through completing it, and it gave me a kind of confidence to hold my own in scholarly conversations and dialogues. So it's kind of like my sort of elevator, like my pass into the door. Even if I'm not going to do it now, I know I can. Yeah, but the failure that I was going to mention was failing to complete my PhD initially. So when I was at Baylor, where I was doing it, 4 years into the program, I hit a wall, and it was mainly due to health issues that I was having. My senior year of college, I started to get weird health symptoms, just sort of low-grade chronic illness stuff, so common today. And I tried to address it, and I did in a lot of ways. I was seeing alternative functional medicine doctors and things like that. Still am, to a degree. But I think the major culprit was the stress load that I undertook, even as a senior in college. It was really high. I had like this intense desire to grow as a student, right, and to learn, and it drove me to do a lot of all-nighters and drink a lot of rock stars and stuff like that. And then I went from there to graduate school, which was like an uptick in intensity. And so no matter how I was eating, no matter how I was, supporting my health, you can't really heal like you're supposed to in that sort of environment. So there was a couple incidents where I kind of hit the wall, and there was one in particular where I was studying for comprehensive exams, and I was on like a very regimented schedule, studying late modern philosophy, everything that's been written in late modern philosophy. And one morning I was reading Hegel, who's notoriously difficult. I was trying to wrap my mind around him, and I had to stop reading because I was super fatigued with my health stuff. And so I said, okay, whatever, I'll take a nap. So that was like at 10 a.m. And then at like noon, I tried again after some coffee, and I had to take another nap. And I got up from that nap, and I'm like, this isn't working. Like, I'm not going to be able to complete this thing. I am a finite creature, and I'm trying to do something beyond my capacity. So that was when I was in Texas, in Waco, and I just talked to my wife that day, and it just became really clear that it was time to push pause or be done altogether. So I talked to my department, and they were super gracious, but I basically said, like, I need a clean break because I don't want the pressure of having to finish over my head. And so I stepped out into the unknown, went back home to California where my family is, did some tutoring stuff to help pay the bills and that kind of thing, and really had like a great opportunity to like reconsider my whole vocation, who I was, what sort of calling I had, what kind of career I was going to go into, but also just to work on my health and be outside of that intense environment for a while. But yeah, I mean, like by all accounts, that was a failure to complete something, and I was okay with the fact that I would probably that I might never go back and finish. But the Lord had other plans, and that was in 2017, and in end of 2019, it started to become clear that that if I chipped away at the rest of the things that I had to do, which were basically some comprehensive exams and writing a book, that I could do it. So I started easing into it a little bit, and I did finish the dissertation, but on a slower pace than I otherwise would. So slower pace than some of my colleagues. Okay, so the lesson there is we are finite embodied creatures. And even though there are some things that are worthy pursuits, not all programs and projects are good for you and good for you to pursue, all things considered. I mean, I was a student, but I was also a father, I was also a husband, I was also a son, I was also involved in my church, things like that, right? So the lesson I learned there is that my vocation should not be limited to a preset program or an employment track. I mean, the way they do professional philosophy in this world is you go to a PhD program that's really intense, and you go into a job market that's really intense, and then you get a job and you're on tenure track, and you have to publish and publish and publish in order to get tenure. It's really intense. There's no in between really. But I realized that if that was me, that I just wasn't going to make it because of my health limitations. And looking at my vocation in those narrow terms prescribed by the field of academic philosophy was way too narrow a view of vocation. Vocation is way more holistic than that. You have to think about your calling with regard to all the different roles that you fill as a human being, and not just with regard to your job, as important as that is.
Yeah, it's definitely, especially with health issues and stuff like that. I mean, you know, getting a PhD, I think, is already, I mean, that's further than a lot of people even go, just in terms of college, and so having that and doing all the other stuff.
Yeah.
That I can't even imagine. But I think in terms of time, we're almost done here. But we do have one final question that we like to ask all of the people we interview, and that question is this: if there was one thing that you would want our audience, college kids, people going into college, even young entrepreneurs who are looking for just general advice. What's one thing that you would want them to leave this episode with? And that can be something you've already mentioned or something completely new.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, let me try to be concise because as I'm thinking through my response, I realized that I haven't been very concise.
Hey, no worries.
Yeah, okay. So, even as you are diligent and even meticulous about your organization and your goal tracking, that sort of thing, you need to be reflective about the system of goals and the structure of your life in general, so that you don't let it rule you. And I think a really, really good practical way of ensuring that you do that, stepping off the train of goal orientation, the tracks that just keep going, whether you want to or not sometimes, is Sabbath, the practice of Sabbath. And this is something I know that's actually, I mean, it's obviously the most ancient of religious practices. It's written into Genesis chapter 1. God rested on the seventh day and called it holy. But it's also actually grown in popularity nowadays, taking a Sabbath, being intentional about just putting work away, and being human for a 24-hour period. I've been practicing the Sabbath since I've got here at Ambrose, and it's been very, very life-giving, life-sustaining. I think that without it, you are tempted to deify your own finite pursuits, and you're tempted to think that it all depends on you. But with the Sabbath, you realize that to a very large extent, almost to an infinite extent, none of the success of your life actually does depend on you. It depends on powers, and I believe a power in particular that's outside of your control. And Sabbath is an opportunity to remember the goodness of that power, the goodness of God, and just to rest in that. So I think a lot of times when an audience like your guys' audience hears that, they think, okay, I just need to be more restful in mentality. And that's actually not what I'm saying. I'm saying, no, actually take that time, write it into your schedule. Whether it's, I do it on Saturdays in preparation for Sunday, but most people do it on Sunday nowadays. Actually take the time to step away and be with family. Some people put away electronics. That's like a next level sort of thing. But and simply to have space for reflection, and then to give yourself space for reflection so that you're not ruled and owned by your own prior pursuits or assumptions about how your life should go. Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah.
You guys take a step?
I mean, during college, it's kind of like, because I'm only taking one class at a time, it's like they give you homework and you kind of just get it done, because it's not hours of homework usually, and a lot of the stuff is group assignments, and so it's even less when you split it all up between people. And so I usually have a lot of free time at the end of my day.
Do a lot of stuff.
And so, right, and so like I'm not working necessarily, at least during my college time, a super stressful week. Summer's a little different, because summers when I just go straight to work, full time, as many hours as I can. So that's a little different, and I still get weekends and stuff like that.
Good.
So yeah, I don't know about you.
Kind of similar scenario in the summer where it's like work. I go to church, and like I'm volunteering for worship now, singing.
Nice.
So yeah, that'll be good. And as far as at school goes, I go to a Christian university, so that helps. And we have like weekly chapels that you have to go to, or it's just like a mini service.
Yeah.
And they talk about some scripture passage, and then there's some worship, and so yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I wasn't able to pull it off, or I didn't try to pull it off when I was in college, because I just thought, like, this work isn't going to do itself, right? Even on Saturday, I got to put some time in. I spend 6 hours working on stuff on a Saturday, typically in college. But I honestly, I encourage you to step out and try it. Whether it's from like how the Jews do it, 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. from Friday to Saturday, or whether it's like Saturday or Sunday or whatever the case may be. You'd have to organize your schedule and change your schedule around that so that you can afford to do that. But it's basically a statement that I have to do this work, but this work is not infinitely important. And there are more important things, namely being human and resting in the power that has created me and established me. So yeah, I'd encourage you guys to explore that a little more. Because for me, not having those sort of practices, I think, is what kind of led to just my overwhelm, my health overwhelm, and sort of breakdown in health and well-being. So yeah. Anyways, that's what I'd leave you guys' audience with.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think that would pretty much wrap it up, especially looking at the time. I think we'll just nicely wrap this up. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Been an absolute pleasure and a joy talking to you.
Yeah. You too.
Conclusion. Yeah, and thank you all for listening and tuning in, watching, whatever you're doing. We really appreciate your support. We've got a ton of awesome podcasts coming up here, so be sure to follow or subscribe. It's different on every platform, so just do all of the above. Like, share, all that good stuff. And we also have a Patreon, so go support us on Patreon if you haven't already. Thank you so much to those who have supported us, and I'm sure we'll have the names or something, flying at you on the screen or something, of those who are supporting us. Otherwise, thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you all next time.